Hey everybody, good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you might be joining us from in the world today. My name is Meg Alexander. I am, as always, honored and excited and cannot wait to get to host another Power to Fly virtual event. Now, before we dive in to today's event, I just want to welcome everybody. So thank you all so much for joining us. Now, if today is your first Power to Fly event, we'll go over some housekeeping in a moment. But before we do, I just want to highlight our code of conduct here. So this looks like a big scary wall of legalese, but truly what it basically boils down to is just don't act like a jerk, y'all. As long as we operate from a place of kindness and respect, it's pretty hard to go wrong from there. If you have any questions on this, or if you want any more further details, you can always follow up along with us. You can always email us at our help desk inbox, which is hi at powertofly.com. All right, now as we go through into our housekeeping for today, I'm so excited. Now, this will give you a little bit of a sneak peek of how you can best participate in today's event. Now, participation is always key. You're welcome to do that in a number of different ways. If you want to, you're always welcome to turn your cameras on and share your smiling, maskless faces with us safely. But y'all, there is no need to be Instagram perfect, okay? Just because I got very fancy and actually washed my hair today does not mean that you can't still come to us from your living room couches, bring in your messy buns, your bathrobes. We don't care, okay? We don't stand on ceremony. We just want to meet you where you are. Now, we are recording as well as live streaming today's event. Hi, YouTube. So what that means is that well, we'll go to that in a second, but we are live streaming as well as recording, which means that you don't have to take notes. You get to sit back, relax, enjoy the conversation that I'm about to have with some fabulous people from Esri, and not worry if you miss a resource that was shared or a link that was listed. Now, you can also participate in the chat if you would like. I'm going to encourage y'all to dive in there and let us know where you're joining us from. I'm coming to you from Toledo, Ohio. This is land that belonged to the Fox, Kickapoo, and Potawatomi tribes in my area. So if you'd like to share, please feel free to let us know where you're joining us from and if you know whose land you're on. Now, like I said, we are recording as well as live streaming. Hi, YouTube. And what that means for all of you is that since we are recording in about 4 to 5 business days, everybody that registered for today's event, that's whether or not you were able to make it today, everybody is going to get an email from Power to Fly with a link to where you can rewatch this recording when we post it on powertofly.com. Now, like I said, that'll take about 4 to 5 business days, but let's say that Valerie or Karl or Roshan says something today that is just like mind-blowing, paradigm shifting, and you can't wait 4 to 5 business days to share this information with a friend or a coworker or a relative. You don't have to. You can head over to our YouTube channel. The links are going to be shared in the chat thread as we go, so just give me a minute here and I'll start throwing those in there. But you can head over to our YouTube channel. The video should be posted by the end of business today. And you are absolutely welcome to share those things all over. Now, the YouTube channel is great. That's got a huge section of some of our kind of like greatest hits are stored there. But truly, y'all, the full wealth, all of our resources live on powertofly.com. So I do recommend you check out the YouTube channel because there's, some greatest hits. Some of our best stuff is there. But y'all, all of those free resources live on powertofly.com. We want to put them in the hands of as many people as possible. So definitely take advantage of that and check out the website as well. All right. Now, as I go back into the chat here, let's see where we've got people coming in from. All right. Adam's coming to us from Houston, Texas. We've got Oscar from Redlands, California. Murat from Galveston. We've got Maron from Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Welcome. Jabran. Hi, Jabran from Ontario. We've also got Monica, who's joining from Lilongwe, Malawi, as well as Terry from Upper Marlboro, Maryland. So welcome, y'all. I love seeing how far the global audience is. All right. Now, as we go through today's event, we are going to be talking to Esri. Now, if you take a look at your screen right now, you'll see a page that's what Esri's company page looks like on powertofly.com. Now, the big important thing on that page is the big pink follow button. It's in the center of the screen. If you're not seeing it on every website, or sorry, every company page on powertofly.com, it's because you're not logged in. But that follow button does some great things for you. Basically, I'm going to lay out a little bit of what it does towards the end of today's event. But what I want y'all to understand is that if anything that we say today really sparks your interest in Esri, I very much encourage y'all to check out their company page, learn a little bit more about them. and get some info. You can also apply to roles directly from that page. Now, in case you're not aware of Esri or who they are, Esri is the global market leader in geographic information systems software, or GIS software. This includes things like location intelligence as well as mapping. Now, Esri takes a geographic approach to problem solving, brought to life by modern GIS technology. Since 1969, Esri has supported customers with geographic science and geospatial analytics, what they call the science of where. Now, by enabling customers to design more efficient cities, deliver clean water and electricity, fight crime, slow climate change, and stamp out disease, Esri is helping create the maps that run the world and make the world a better place. Now, I think that sounds pretty fabulous. But again, if you've never heard of Esri, absolutely take this as an opportunity to dive in. They're a fascinating organization, and I think you'll have a lot of interest in them after hearing some of the things that we're going to talk about today. Now, I'm very excited to introduce our group of speakers today before we dive into questions. So first up, we have Valerie joining us. Valerie is an accomplished product development professional with over 20 years of experience in software development, quality assurance, and release management. Now, Valerie's expertise and dedication to quality have guided countless ArcGIS releases. With a unique perspective on the often chaotic nature of software projects, Valerie finds joy in witnessing specialized teams come together to create innovative solutions. For Valerie, releasing software is like throwing a party. Each launch is a celebration of hard work, collaboration, and creativity. Valerie, I'm so excited to welcome you to the stage today. Is there anything else that you would like our audience members to know about you before we dive into more on Esri?
Yeah, thanks, Meg. I'm really happy to be here today. And yeah, I'm based off of Redlands, California. So for those that are in California, Redlands, Ontario, hello, we're neighbors. I've been at Esri. This is my 20th year. Um, and uh, and still going strong. And just a little something about me. It's October. It's Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and so I just wanted to do a quick shout out to all the survivors out there, those that are fighting the fight, and of course their caretakers, because it's personal for me. I'm 7 years cancer free this year, um, so just bringing that out there for Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Go pink.
Yes, I love that. Thank you for sharing, Valerie, and congratulations. That is honestly a massive accomplishment.
Thank you.
Good for you. I absolutely love the shout out. I always forget about this,
Love
so
it.
thank you so much. All right, now joining Valerie, we also have Karl. Hold on here, Karl. Let me throw you up on screen here. There we go. Now, Karl is an accessibility team lead at Esri, where he's been advocating for disability awareness since 2016. Karl leads a pioneering team of accessibility engineers and specialists who focus on enhancing accessibility standards across ArcGIS software products for people of all ability ranges. Capture his complete attention with discussions about science fiction and fantasy literature, vegetarian or vegan cooking. Karl, what else should our audience members know about you today?
Yep. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Meg. I'm also coming from the Redlands area. First of all, my name is Karl Frantz, he, him pronouns, and I currently live in Southern California near Redlands as well. I was born, however, in the Pacific Northwest. So shout out to that Tacoma, Seattle I-5 corridor. As it says on the screen, I started at Esri about 10 years ago, and I'm proud to have started and be currently leading our accessibility team there. It's a thrilling prospect. As October is another month, it's a Disability Employment Awareness Month as well. Just to point the storyline back at myself, I think some disabilities are invisible, some are quite visible. Like I have glasses and I have mobility issues. You can't quite see that about me, but that doesn't prevent me from you know, doing my job and being employed. And I'm excited to join that conversation today and help celebrate disability awareness or employment awareness. Yeah.
I love this call out as somebody who has multiple diagnoses and abilities and disabilities therein. Very, very, very happy to have this conversation. And I love that the conversation is much less much less visibly focused now than it has been in the past. So I think that that is wonderful. Thank you, Karl, for that call out. All right, joining his fabulous colleagues from Esri, we also have Roshan joining us. Now, Roshan is a software development lead where he works on ArcGIS Pro, the premier desktop geographic information systems application. His primary focus is on mapping and feature symbology, helping users effectively visualize and interpret geospatial data. Roshan is passionate about leveraging GIS to solve complex real-world problems. In his leadership role, he manages a team of developers, mentoring them in their professional growth and guiding their contributions to Esri's mission. Roshan, I'm very excited to bring you to the stage as well. What else would you like our audience members to know about you before we dive in more on Esri?
Oh, thank you, Meg. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. I'm excited to be here. I've been working at Esri for the last 18 years. I am based off of Redlands as well, like Valerie and Karl. I actually work closely with Karl and Valerie for the work we do, so I'm excited to join them as well. The one thing I did want to point out is people always wonder how to say my name. I've had different pronunciations, so much so when my wife and I started dating, she had no clue how to say my name. So I gave it a hard thought. I'm like, what's the easiest way to tell people how to say my name? And I've come up with this. If you add the letter R in front of the word ocean, you will always say my name right.
Thank you. Thank you
So
for this call out. Thank you. No, because
that's a fun
I'm
fact.
very remiss. I normally ask before we go live, and I got very confident and was sure I was correct. So thank you for this call out. I really
Oh, no
appreciate it.
problem. I still respond to however you call my name, and I am not a stickler for it. The other fun fact is I am very passionate about cricket. Cricket is a game that is predominantly played in the Commonwealth countries, but I've been playing cricket in a semi-professional capacity for the last 14 to 15 years.
No
There used to be an
way.
Esri team, so there's a bunch of Esri employees that played in the league, but hey, those are the fun facts I wanted to share.
I love that. Okay, so I know next to nothing about cricket. I just know that it's vaguely baseball adjacent in that there are a lot of rules that seemingly contradict themselves. What is your favorite part about cricket?
Um, that's a great question. I think the more I've played, it's just the camaraderie, the team spirit, just playing with a bunch of people that are passionate about the same thing. That's kind of been the most important thing for me.
I like that. Very cool. Right. Well, thank you so much, Roshan. Love that. And very appreciative for the call out for pronunciation. I love being the teachable moment for people. So thank you for that. All right. Now we are going to jump on into questions. So let me bring everybody up on stage here. There we go. And add in, there we go. Okay. So to start us off, Karl, I want to go to ask you a question first. Let's talk about bringing the more human side of innovation into current roles. I think people are trying to innovate and trying to make things better, but it when we try and innovate, I feel like a lot of times we lean on technology. So if we are trying to keep it more of, kind of human centric, what do you recommend?
Okay, so this is where I start off and admit to everyone I'm super pretentious and I read a lot and I steal ideas from books and authors. And if you wouldn't mind, I want to shine a light on Octavia E. Butler, a science fiction author, and her scholarship, and some people who have taken that scholarship, such as Adrienne Marie Brown, another author who I'm a massive fan of, and they have talked about applying, some of the perspectives of what success looks like when dealing with people. And this right
Mhm.
here is, I think, the core to this question, from my opinion. So success is, successful life is adaptable, it's adaptive, it's nonlinear, meaning it's iterative, it's resilient, right? It's interconnected, meaning it's decentralized. It's fecund, meaning it creates more possibilities. And I'm stealing this list from Octavia E. Butler and Adrienne Marie Brown. This is like a kind of a combined list of these two. And these things mean that we're intentional. Everything that we do with intention, if we're doing it iteratively, if we're doing it resiliently, if we're doing it in a decentralized, interconnected manner, then that's going to create more possibilities and that's going to create more innovation. And I think it's that intention, that's an infinite process, and that's our goal right there.
Yeah.
And so now so that's the pretentious answer to that question, where I pulled into scholarship and said, well, what does Octavia E. Butler say? What does Adrienne Marie Brown say? And I love that they are looking at things non-linearly, that it's iterative, that it's interdependent, and that those two things, if we're intentional about those things, we're going to succeed. So bringing the human side of innovation into our role means that we're looking at that process, right? Yeah. So was that pretentious enough? Should I
Yeah, I think so. Well, first off, it's not stealing if you cite your sources. Okay.
Yes.
So it's just not, it's not, you can't be stealing when you're like, hey, this is the person I'm stealing from. So I love this. I am a big fan of, who thought this? Somebody smarter than me, and I'll tell you who. So
It
I'm a big, big
applies.
fan of that.
It applies. The pattern is there, and I think it's the intentionality of that pattern, right? And so that will be a broad enough net to catch that innovation in our current,
Yeah. Well, and I think it's important to highlight the intentionality part, because a lot of times we have this conversation, and I use this analogy when it comes to diversity a lot, but it also matters when it comes to like inclusivity. But if you are, let's say that you have a grassy patch and you just let it go, maybe you're going to get wildflowers, maybe you're going to get grass, maybe you're going to get wheat. You're certainly not going to get a rose garden. It's just not going to happen. Now, if you want a rose garden, you need to do the things to cultivate a rose garden. But if you are trying to make a wildflower garden, you do different things. So I think the intentionality part for me, I love centering that to start with, because it's like you can't just you can just let the ground go and see what happens. But if you have any like stake in that, you need it to come out a certain way. You maybe need tomatoes to grow from the pot, or you need it to be, I don't know, bee balm or whatever it is you need to grow. Then you have to have the intentionality. You can't just show up and water and hope that your perfect wildflower bed starts springing up. Yeah.
Yeah. And it turns out that humans are imperfect, and that human side
What?
of innovation. I know. Did you hear? Have you heard? So there it is. There's that necessary piece there. I'm really glad you brought that up, Meg. That's an outstanding point.
I get to listen to very smart people all day, every day. It's my
Good.
favorite part of my job. Val, I want to go to you about this as well. How do you think we can bring more of the human side of innovation into our current roles?
Yeah, for me, it's just starting out with listening, right? Every year we've got these user conferences, and every year we're reminded what Jack Dangerman, our president, normally tells us when we're um, meeting with our users. And he always says, be interested, not interesting. And to me, that goes beyond just our users. It it also resonates with my colleagues, right? And when we start listening to each other, you start gaining a different perspective on things. You start understanding where someone's coming from, what their thoughts are, and what their concerns are, what the problems they have. And these conversations that we just start having starts leading to be more collaborative, and we tend to have more flexibility in the way we think, and then we become more creative. um, and in time, I think we just gain this respect for each other. And I feel like we have a lot of this, working with Roshan, Karl, and other teams. I think the great ideas is just being shared through very thoughtful conversations by people that are just passionate about the different areas that you know of their expertise and stuff. So
Mhm. I absolutely agree. I think you're right. I think it comes from a part of wanting to share, of wanting to either share the gifts that you have, share your expertise, or even just make sure that whatever your experience is, that you're not the only one having that experience. Yeah, I like this.
yeah.
Okay. Um, I want to go, we're going to stick with Karl and Val for a minute here. Val, I'm going to give you the first crack at this one. In your experience, what has been the most effective way to align cross-functional teams around human-centered innovation? I know this is especially, can be especially difficult in large, complex environments where you're trying to scale, and compliance and speed can very often compete with empathy. It's really easy to say like, oh yeah, we could do it in a million years, but we just don't have the time. So how do you feel about this? What do you think has been most effective if you were trying to align cross-functional teams with human-centric innovation?
Yeah, this is actually pretty challenging. I'm in the release team. We deal with a lot of different teams on a regular basis, and you know, different teams have they all have competing schedules. And when we meet with teams for a release that they're about to have, for example, they all come with their own priority. Their product is their top priority, right? And they don't really necessarily know what they're competing with. And our team, since we work with dozens of teams and our leadership, we have the overall priority. We have an understanding of the overall priority, and typically we know where that particular team's project fall in the whole scheme of things, right? And um, and no matter what, we treat every team the same, right? We have a process in place to enforce our guidelines, and by doing this, we're not really isolating any one team. And that could mean that they're filling out some form where we have a standard meeting to meet in, whatever process it is. We just have these standards, and we let those teams know what these standards are, because at the end of the day, we all want to be successful. And so, more often or not, you know, the teams that we work with, they're actually happy to follow these standards, right? They're actually looking for this type of guidance from us, and they appreciate it because it makes their life easier, right? It makes this part of product development easier for them. So, for us, it's big or small. Every product is important, right? It's an Esri product, and we make this known by working closely with each individual team to help them release their product following our standards.
Okay. Karl, how do you feel about this? Do you think that are there any holes in what Val said? Anything you would like to add to that?
I think Val really identified the successful, what is it? Component is the standard, right? So, from an accessibility perspective, we can have a bunch of demands on a bunch of teams. We can say, this is the law, this is the expectation, this is the tool that you use. Here's a bunch of, but if we don't reinforce that with some kind of consistency, then that's going to be difficult for teams. So I think for us, it's kind of a three-part process. I think first, we need to provide the education or evangelism, right? So be the echo in the organization that you want to hear, right? Don't be a shy one, be a bold one. And it turns out sometimes you get to build teams and initiatives around those echoes. So you have to have a vision, you have to have a perspective, but then you have to have the second piece. People need to know what to react to. You need to
Mhm.
offer resources. You need to set the pattern and say that this is what good looks like, and that, like in a fractal nature, that will repeat itself throughout the organization. That small growth. It will grow regardless of your intent. So be a good pattern, right? Have intention around that pattern. And then the third thing, I think, just build stamina. Be patient because it takes time. Change and adaptation takes time. These iterations that we work through, and it takes resilience. And so, I think it's that combination of providing that standard, caring about every single team, like Val said, um, but then reinforcing it with that standard, giving all teams something to react to. You can't have an expectation without that education piece. So educating people, offering the resources, and then, being resilient and patient and applying that as consistently as you can. Yeah. So just a lot of reinforcement of that standards piece that I think Val mentioned.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. Roshan, my next question is going to go to you. Now, obviously, AI has been a major buzzword for 8 to 12 business years at this point, it feels like. Is there a risk that innovation is going to lean too heavily on AI rather than human creativity and problem solving?
Absolutely. Simply because it's so convenient to turn to AI and ask for a answer. It's fast, it does everything for you, and you feel like you're done. But the flip side to that, the irony in the whole question is how can you rely on something that is a trained model or just looks at data to innovate? It can only answer questions that it has been trained on. It kind of cannot reimagine or challenge itself and say, this needs to be done differently. It cannot take into account the human factor or the human side. It doesn't have empathy, right? It only knows, okay, the answer to this question is this. That's it. Only human beings have that ability. Only we can be creative. Only we can innovate. Only we can consider what the actual need is to reinvent something. The other downside to using AI, depending on how the AI has been trained, what sort of questions are being asked, it can be biased. It might not consider every different aspect that you as a human being can take into account. So those are some of the things that you need to be careful about, and which is why when we work with AI, we constantly remind ourselves about human in the loop. I think this is a term most people would have heard. This is where we say a human has to be involved at every step, whether it is analyzing the answers or even framing the questions that you want to ask to the AI. You need to kind of critique it and train it in a way to make sure it kind of takes into account all the different factors about human empathy, right? I'll conclude by saying, I'm not saying don't use AI, use it more as a collaborator, not as the key driver when you innovate. Yes, help be a co-pilot, like you are the main driver, keep it as a co-pilot where it can maybe help you figure out something, but not drive that process.
Yeah. I think it's a conversation that I feel like we're going to keep having to have about AI, especially as long as we insist on calling it AI when like we haven't actually created artificial intelligence, y'all. We've created smarter Google and more like slightly faster logic gates. That's basically what it is. So I think, Roshan, you make a really good point. You can't ask a machine to innovate when you have to train it to do the thing, right?
Correct.
It's like,
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you can feed it 4 million masterful paintings. It's not going to come up with something new and better. It's going to basically churn out Thomas Kincaid. Sorry, Grand. I know you loved him. He was the painter of light, but you know what I mean? So like you're looking for divine inspiration and actually you're getting hotel artwork. So I really think it is very important to highlight that, like, yes, AI can solve a lot of things, mostly because it can think faster than people can, pretty much, can crunch the data faster.
Correct.
But yeah, I mean, you have to have you have to have a person involved because otherwise you end up with what? People that have 3 elbows and like it can't draw hands and it's
Correct.
a whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll add one more thing. It's always good to remember what it stands for is artificial intelligence. As one of my coworkers on my team always reminds me, it's not natural, it's not organic intelligence, it's still artificial.
Yes, yes. Don't get me wrong. Artificial can be great. I love me some squeeze cheese. It's not real, but it's also not part of a balanced diet. It's a nice like on the top kind of thing. Okay, let's move on and talk a little bit about career pathways. Now the tech field is something that is it's very appealing right now. It's very, I don't know if you're old enough to remember The Graduate, but it feels very adjacent to like plastics. You got to be in plastics. Only now it's tech. What do you think people should know if they are trying to get started in the tech industry, either entry level or pivoting in from a different career? What should people know about tech in general?
Absolutely. The first thing is starting with a good foundation. Once you decide you want to get into the tech field, try to get your foundation strong. What do I mean by that? Pick a programming language you want to learn. In addition to just learning that programming language, try to focus on some of the core computer science concepts, whether it is trying to understand a bit more about the architecture of computers, understand a bit about data structures, algorithms, because those are building blocks. If you put them in place, and let's say a couple years down the line, you want to learn another programming language, it will become very simple because ultimately every programming language is you just talking to the hardware. It's all bits and bytes. It's just a different way of talking, right? So once you have that foundation established, it's easy for you to pivot and learn something new. The next thing is the tech field is vast. It's web development, AI, UI, UX, or gaming, or programming microprocessors, or cybersecurity. So it can feel overwhelming when you get started, like, well, what do I do? That is when you kind of take a step back, figure out, okay, what am I really interested in? What am I passionate about? What can I continue doing for the next 5 to 10 years? And then you pick a field that you feel that you can continue learning and working with, right? So in a way, pick a focus or a specialization within the tech field. Once you've done that, I'd say deep dive. Try to figure out and learn most of the things you can about that field. And in this day and age, it's been made a little bit more simpler. In addition to books, there's so many blogs, there's tutorials, there's podcasts, there's online courses you can subscribe to, or even YouTube channels that kind of explain the topic you're interested in. And let's say you want to take it one step further, you can always find a local interest group that focuses on that topics. Then you will meet a bunch of peers that are also interested in the same thing. You will learn with that community. And maybe you'll even find a mentor that is willing to take you under your wing and kind of guide you through this process. Once you have these in place, I want to say practice. You have to practice. Um, I might know a few programming languages. If I've not written code in that for a few months, I feel like I've forgotten. So constant practice. Start with something simple, nothing complicated. Pick a simple project, then slowly dial up the complexity of that work and try to build more complex projects. The one thing I'll add here is never forget to showcase your work. Whether it is a simple project or a complex project, make sure you put it on a GitHub repo. This has two benefits. One, let's say somebody comes and you're trying to apply for a job, a recruiter then figures out, oh, this is your GitHub repo. It shows how committed you are to learning. It shows how consistent you are. It shows that you've grown over time. The other aspect is it's kind of a record of how good you are. It's a reminder to yourself, hey, I did all of these things. I am good at this. It's okay. I can do this. So it's kind of self-reassuring in a way. And I'll end this answer by saying, in the tech world, change is the only constant. What was in 1 year ago might not be in now. So you have to enter into an agreement with yourself. You need to tell yourself, I need to constantly learn. So the commitment to being a lifelong learner is very important for you to keep up with everything that is happening.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's very, very good advice. And I mean, it very much reflects what a lot of people tell you if you're trying to learn anything new is, start with your curiosity. What are you wondering about this topic? Because if you have that honest curiosity and you start chasing that, you're going to learn more things. You go to a barbershop enough times, you're going to get a haircut. So you keep circling around the material. You will pick things up, even if you're not intending to do so. Most of us don't sit down and study Cardi B lyrics, yet we all know the lyrics to WAP. So it's just one of those things of like, if you keep putting yourself in that orbit or in those situations or in those settings, you will be able to pick things up better. I think that's good, and I really appreciate that. I really appreciate your call out that like we're all constantly going to be learning, and it can feel really overwhelming. I get like this sometimes where I'm like, oh, I have to know all of the things that I used to know and keep that knowledge, but then I have to add to it, and it's like, no, we're constantly kind of jettisoning, right? Like, remember how to get into my MySpace and change up all of my backgrounds and things anymore. So I haven't done it in like 15 years, and that's sad. But I now know how to operate TikTok, where I definitely did not like 3 weeks ago because it was very, very scary. Don't worry, my niece helped me. She's 14. We're good. But like that's the thing is like I was scared and I was like, I don't know how to do this. You know how to phone, help me do the thing. Like ask people around you if they know what they're doing, or if you know somebody that knows something, ask to learn from them. Try different styles of learning. It doesn't have to just be sitting in a classroom or going through a questionnaire. You can be kind of falling down the Wikipedia rabbit hole and learning that way. You can do it by, perusing what other people's projects have been. And before we leave it, Roshan, that GitHub idea, stellar. My side hustle, my job apart from this is I'm a cake decorator. I take pictures of every single cake I do, even if it is literally just a basic white buttercream with a red border. I take a picture of every single one because that way I can point to like, what did I actually do this week? I can flip through and be like, oh yeah, I actually made like 14 cakes. Okay, that's cool. but also then I can go back and be like, how did I do that one thing? Or I'm not feeling very inspired today. I don't have any designs at mind. So, I'll just go back and flip through stuff that I've done before. And again, it's a silly comparison because it's sugar versus coating, but truly, like, you are giving yourself a bank to look back on. And even just to see that's how bad I was at this to start with, but now I'm this good and I didn't even have to think about it. So I love this idea. This is really, really great. Jobran, I see your hand. Unfortunately, we can't do raised hands today, but please feel free to keep sending questions in the chat. I'm recording all of them that get asked, and hopefully we'll be able to get to as many as possible today. Thank you for your enthusiasm. All right, Val, I have a question for you, and then Roshan, we're going to go back to you. This person had written in, Val, saying, I've been applying for engineering management roles, but keep facing rejections despite strong leadership experience. What are the most common reasons technically strong leaders don't pass the hiring bar? And how can we reframe our profiles to overcome this? Whoever wrote this question in, beautiful question. Love it. Val, what do you say? It's a big question.
Yeah, it is. And it's been a while since I applied for a job. Um, but I do have a lot of friends and colleagues that are in the industry, and they've encountered similar experiences, right? Especially when you've had all these experience in leadership and in management. And from what I've seen, most of the time, they're looking for that management job. They're looking for something that matches exactly to what they've done, right? And or sometimes they're just looking at the title, manager, right? And and in any leadership role, is it really all the same? And you start thinking about, think back in the early days of being that manager. I doubt anyone just trusted you at first, right? Like, especially in this environment that we're in the tech world, where we're surrounded by really smart people. So I know for me, it took time to gain my team's respect. When I was hired at Esri, I started out as a release engineer. But before Esri, I actually had a previous life, right? And I had a few years in program management. And so I was managing people and projects. And so when I was interviewing at Esri, they were kind of concerned, they were like, this isn't a manager. You gonna be okay with that? And I was like, yeah, I am. I really wanted to focus on my technical skills again, right? And but you know, not that long after I got hired, I eventually became a lead, and then now the role that I am today. And in those early days, that lead position, it had its challenges, mainly because I had this title, um, and people that weren't used to that, right? They were kind of like, okay, who are you now, right? You're just not. Well, what are you bringing in? I was almost like, was I like a threat? I mean, there's just this uncertainty of what this role would have. And so I guess I had to earn the team's respect. I had to earn their trust. And I did that by showing them that I understood what what they were doing by doing the work, right? And maybe I don't do it as well as they do, but I was able to, and I was supportive of what they did. And and through that we started collaborating on different ideas, and we were on the same page. And eventually, I'd like to think that it improved our team and what we started delivering. And so I guess, the advice that I've got is, you know, step back, right? And perhaps just put more emphasis on the technical experience that you can bring in versus the leadership experience. Because if you're a strong leader, you know, that leadership, it's just going to come naturally, right?
Totally.
And, and and then think about, okay, how did this leadership that you've had, how did you use those technical skills to bring your previous projects and your teams to success? You know, so yeah, so I think it's just step back and say, so what is it that you can provide, and then you can
Mhm.
lead the way.
I like that. I love that advice. All right, so before we leave this area, Roshan, I want to go back to you. What do hiring managers and recruiters look for when candidates don't have direct experience, especially, sorry, pardon me, especially regarding personal projects?
Um, I I'd say I interview around 20 people a year. Um, so I'll share what I look for. Let's say I'm looking for very specific programming language experiences and they don't have it. How do I assess if they're a good fit? The first thing I look for is problem solving. Uh, this is language agnostic. It's not dependent on any programming language. For all ends and purposes, they can even solve the problem in English. Have no problem with that. So the ability to describe and understand what the problem is to begin with. You cannot solve something you do not understand. So that is the first thing. Can you explain what the problem is? Then once they successfully do that, the next step is just come up with a few logical steps on how you will go about solving the problem. The one thing I always tell everybody I speak with is I am really not focused on if your answer is right or wrong. I'm only focused on how you get to the answer. What steps do you take to get to this answer? And I'm here to help you go through that process. I'm not just going to sit here and stare at you. No, I'm going to make sure I'm actively involved and help you in any way I can without obviously giving out the full answer. So I'm focused on the process of problem solving, not if the answer is right or wrong. Um, the next thing is communication, right? You might have a wealth of experience or expertise if you cannot successfully communicate that in a way that others understand, or if you don't have the ability to explain what your thoughts are, why you decided to do something, um, then it kind of is not very useful. So that is very important. And when you communicate, you need to communicate with kindness, not just from a place of anger. You need to make sure that you include everyone when you communicate. And it's so often where I think all of us have been in meetings, just a few people talk. Make sure that you include everybody. Make sure that communication reaches everybody, right? The next thing I look for is a commitment to learning, because it's very, very rare where your set of skills are a complete and full match to any job you apply. That is probably very rare. So there's always going to be something you have to learn, something you have to get used to, especially let's say you want to work at Esri. It's a big ecosystem, so there's a lot of new learning to do. Are you ready to learn? Can you kind of exhibit a willingness to learn? Does your past work lend itself and tell me you're willing to learn? The last thing, be a team player. It's very rare that you'll have a job where you're going to just sit by yourself and do something. You will always work with others. Are you willing to do that? Because some people might not. Um, are you willing to show empathy and kindness and understand and support your team? Because you're only as successful as your team, and your team is reliant on you to deliver that, right? So if you don't have direct experience, these are the things I look for. The other thing I kind of emphasize, or let's say you've done work in a completely different area to what the job is calling for. Are you able to explain that to me? That shows me that whatever area you focused on, you were able to fully understand. You have expertise in that area. That proves that in the future, you'll be able to translate that into this new position. So those are some of the things I look for when somebody doesn't have direct experience.
I like this. I think it's good, and I think it helps because I feel like a lot of times people are told like, okay, well, look, focus on your transferable skills, focus on this, focus on that, but it can be unclear what might be kind of standing out the most for a hiring manager. So I love this. Thank you so much, Roshan. Okay, Karl, I'm going to go to you first for this next one, and then Roshan will answer second. What are the best ways to work effectively across UX development and product disciplines?
Yeah, that is an excellent question. I feel like that's a lot of what we do. All of us, UX groups, design groups, right? Development groups, other product disciplines, leadership, management. These are all communities that we work with. And I think there's a really simple answer, believe it or not. I think it's just treat them differently, right? Like each group has their own individual goals. tools and an understanding of the product itself, right? And so what are the motivations we have in UX, UI, and design? What's new? What is that best practice around design? What are the user flows, user expectations, workflows? What are those personas? What is the front end design? Um, and how does that influence development? And then you work with the development communities with an entirely different set of motivations. Where are the resources for the developers? Are the resources in somewhere where the developers already are? Or are you trying to pull the developers out of their environment and look at your set of resources over here? That might not be a great approach. Are you providing code? Are you providing documentation to developers? Because that's what they're looking for. With the other disciplines, management motivations, like the questions they're asking are significantly different. Are the people using our product? Which people? How many? Are we making money? What is the message of the product? And I think for me, it's treating them differently. And from an accessibility perspective, that appeal becomes different from group to group. The appeal that an accessibility engineer or somebody on the accessibility team to a group of designers, that motivation might sound a little different than the motivation that we're using to influence a developer or leadership. So yeah, I think it's those shifting individualities between groups and really just treating them appropriately, identifying the goal for each group and being there to communicate that goal, having that intentionality, right? And iterating throughout those different groups in the ways that make sense for those groups. Yeah.
I like that. Roshan, do you feel similarly about this?
Absolutely. I actually want to give an example because that might be a bit more tangible. It might be kind of give you an insight of what we do at Esri. So Carl and I think Val also all work on ArcGIS Pro. Like I mentioned in my profile, it is Esri's premier desktop software. ArcGIS Pro is part of the ArcGIS system. There is ArcGIS Online, there's ArcGIS Enterprise, there are several other apps that Esri builds, and all these apps and software systems need to work together. But focusing on Pro itself is built by around 65 small teams. It is around 400 to 450 people working on a single product. This is just the dev teams. There's Carl's team, which does accessibility. There's the UI UX team. There is Val's team that helps us with releasing the software. There's QA team and there's product managers, right? So this is a massive undertaking. And how do we keep it all together? Like, what are some of the things we do to make sure we communicate, stay on the same page? We follow the Scrum, which is an agile framework. We've done that for the past 15 years in terms of Pro. So at the beginning of every release, each team which has a product owner and a Scrum Master, all these different product owners for the 65 teams come together and figure out, okay, what is the driver or what is the motivation for this release? What are we trying to build? Why are we building something? I think that kind of helps us align all our business goals, sets priorities, because then each team can then figure out, okay, these are the things we need to build to align with this common goal. Because to the end user, they don't view Pro as it's been built by 65 different teams. No, the user this is Pro. Everything should look in sync. So that is very important, kind of setting clear goals and priorities at the beginning of each release, then sets everybody up to succeed. The other important thing is, how do you stay in sync? There is 450 people. Everybody can interpret something a different way. So open and constant communication. So communicate early and often. So we do that at different levels. We do it within a team where a dev and a product engineer talk, or we do it across teams. So let's say two teams work together. They need to communicate. Or let's say you're working on something that spans 10 different teams, right? So all these teams need to communicate. So we have a few processes in place. For example, we have end of iteration review meetings where everybody presents their work. We have Scrum of Scrums. I know Val and Carl come to that, where all the team leads come and talk on a weekly basis on, hey, how does this work? Where are we at? So communication is, I would say, the cog to the whole giant wheel of Pro. So we try to stay in sync. The other thing, I think Carl touched on this, when you have so many smart people working together, there are bound to be disagreements. But how you solve those disagreements, we need to constructively solve those. We need to respect each other's expertise, right? everybody is an expert or everybody has an opinion, but we need to make sure they feel heard. We need to make sure they understand what we are building. So respectfully and constructively solving those disagreements is a very important part. The other thing is we need to be agile. We need to be able to change, or we need to be able to get feedback and incorporate that into what we do, as opposed to not embracing change and being rigid. Because at the end of every iteration, we have a small increment of the work we've done. Let's say user feedback comes in and says, no, this is quite not what we want. We need to be able to incorporate that, make that change, because ultimately, why are we building it? For users, right? They need to be happy. The last thing
Yeah.
I'll say is even our best laid plans sometimes do not work out. So we need to show grace and be kind. We should not dwell on what went wrong, but rather focus on, okay, what can we learn from this so that it keeps us moving forward, and how can we make that better next time? So that is something I think Val's team does really well, Carl's team does really well. We all show each other grace and make sure, "Oh, okay, this did not go well. That's okay. Let's figure it out. Let's fix this and go forward."
Love it. Absolutely love it. All right, we have a little under 10 minutes left before we'll be off air for today. So I want to make sure that we respect everybody's timelines. So I'm going to skip around with some of our questions to make sure that we hit a bunch of our top areas here. Karl, I want to go to you to talk a little bit about the future of work. As you had said, it's Disability Employment Awareness Month. How do you see AI evolving as an accessibility tool for the future of work?
AI as an accessibility tool for the future of work. Yes, absolutely. First, I think Roshan had a really well-defined answer to, what is good about AI? What do we like about AI? How helpful is it? And then some of the drawbacks, some of the things that we should keep in mind, right? And I think from an accessibility specific perspective, there are positive things. Okay, I am envisioning a world where our technology can recognize user needs as a holistic set of metadata, right? Or that can auto magically, right, adjust settings to align your technology with expected assistive technologies that people are using. So a user with color vision needs or screen reader expectations or keyboard navigation patterns or tools, that's something that AI can be aware of, and we can utilize that. For mapping, something specific and important to Esri, providing increasingly accurate alternative text to text media like maps. Yeah, so those are great. Those are great accelerators. However, I think Roshan also commented on some of the drawbacks, and some of that is bias. Who trained that AI? Does it have an understanding of disability? Does it have an understanding of the intersections that disability exists on? And um, it often also requires potentially a steeper paywall. So there's that familiar socioeconomic barrier between, what technologies some people have access to and what
Mhm.
others don't. And so I think, well, isn't that exhilarating? We're in this space where it can provide all of these amazing things, and yet we should be really careful about what we do with it. So in terms of the future, I think that, we can't avoid it. It's here. Is it AI yet, or is it what we were describing it earlier? It's just kind of like a smarter tool, natural language tool. Well, we'll see as that moves forward. But I do think that, I'm going to echo some of the pieces that Roshan said as well about, look, there's accessibility and disability specific things it's really pulling people into the conversation. Let's just make sure that we're not also at the same time excluding a whole nother community, because we're good at that and technology is good at that, and I don't know that AI is going to be the tool that prevents that, right? So
Mhm.
the human
Yeah.
intervention piece still being that intention still being necessary.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, my last question, directly for Karl, and then we've got one that's going to go to everybody. Um, how do you measure whether your accessibility efforts are truly making a difference?
Yeah, great question. Again, making a difference. Well, that means if you know that you've made a difference, it means that you've tracked it, right? It literally means tracking and responding to change, right? So the question is, how are you tracking? Or rather, what metrics are you looking for? Is it web traffic? Is it customer technical support feedback? Um, are there the web content accessibility guidelines in your products? Do you have accessibility conformance reports? Are there issues in your dev repos, right? How are you planning to measure those metrics? Are you evaluating your product with any level of um, on schedule? Are you evaluating it annually on every release? Are you using assistive technology testing tools? If so, which? If it's your product issue count that you're tracking, have you dashboarded that? Do you have internal development repos that you're tracking? If it's the ACR or your conformance report metrics, do you even have a report? What are the conformance levels? Support, partially supports, does not support. Are you dashboarding that? If it's customer feedback, what are you hearing from customer support, technical support? What rubric or knowledge base are they even using to educate people or respond to people? Do they need training? Do you have an alias that you can respond to? Are you putting blogs out there? Do you have other posts? Are you hosting events? There's a lot of these metrics. And I think the question all goes back to, well, what are you tracking? And if you're tracking all of these things, you're going to have an answer to that question. You're going to not be, you may not like the answer to that question, but you are going to have access to a very real answer to the question. Um, what was it? Is this making a difference? Yeah. And
I
it
think you
sounds
hit on
boring.
a really big thought there. You
Well,
might not like the answer to the question.
that's right.
It's still an answer, though.
Mhm.
And I think that that's important. We're humans are very good at not liking the answers and just saying, no, I don't agree with that. It's fine.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah,
Agreed.
I like that call out. Okay. All right. We have about 4 minutes to go. Unfortunately, we don't have time to ask the last two questions I had. So instead, we're going to scrap that and I'm going to ask one question for each of you. So same question. So sit and think about it. I'm going to give you the question. We'll say our goodbyes and then you'll answer. What you all have been at Esri for a grip, let's say. What is the thing that keeps you at Esri? That you're like, I'm not going to find this anywhere else, or this is where I'm sticking. I like it here because X, Y, Z. All right. So you think about that. While you do, I want to say a quick thank you to our audience members. We all know that you have tons and tons, myriad options when it comes to events like this. So I am incredibly honored and thankful that you chose to spend time with Powerfly and Esri today. Now, obviously, I love that you came to this event because it means I have a job. However, I love even more that you came to this event because you just took 60 minutes out of your day to do something positive for yourself and your career. That is not easy. It is a thankless task in this day and age. And so, whether you are a little treat person or not, listen to Meg, okay? Reward yourself. Pat on the back, gold star, cookie, coffee drink, maybe not Starbucks, is all I'm saying. But whatever it is, reward yourself, okay? Again, these are not easy things to do, and you could have just sat back and watched Netflix, and I wouldn't have known the difference. So, thank you. Thank you so much for coming to this event. We are incredibly grateful. Very much enjoyed spending time with all of you. All right. Val, we're going to go with you first, then Karl, then Roshan. Val, what keeps you at Esri?
Work-life balance.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, I mean, I drive to work an hour a day, one way and back, right? And I've been doing this for 20 years, so there's got to be something. And Esri allows me to do what I love to do, and more importantly, I'm me there. And I work with so many, smart folks, and I just enjoy it. But at the same time, I can go home and I could be with my family, and I'm mom, right? I'm just mom, and no one knows the wiser of what I do at Esri. And it's okay because I'm just there, as volunteering to do whatever. But that's what I love about Esri, is that I get to live both worlds, and and just like you said, do something special for you, and that's what I feel. So
Love that. Love that response. Karl, how about you?
Not to sound too cheesy, but Esri really cares about people. And I think that they care about people that are not working at Esri and who are working at Esri. I double click on everything Val just said. You do get to have your life, be yourself. You don't have to put that away. It's a diverse environment and it champions diversity. And uh, I really appreciate that. And from an accessibility perspective, that's very important for me for um, Esri to acknowledge disability in a way that, disability is not a bad word. That we're talking about people using technology, and Esri cares about people. And I feel that, and I feel that our customers, users on the other end of the technology, also hopefully feel that too. I love that about Esri.
I love that answer. That is excellent. And one of the things that I like to highlight, especially when it comes to terms like disability, if you feel uncomfortable using it, it's probably because you've either used it or heard it used as a pejorative in the past. That is why it feels uncomfortable. That's okay, because now that we know better, we do better.
Mm.
But we call things what they are because people need help, y'all. We got it. We're not going to mince words and waste time with that. So I think that is lovely. Thank you, Karl. All right, Roshan, how about you? What keeps you at Esri?
In addition to what Karl and Val said, I think hands down for me, it's the people I work with. As somebody who joined Esri right out of school, had no clue what GIS was, I have truly enjoyed all the support I've gotten. I can literally walk into anybody's office, or anybody can walk into anybody's office and ask a question. People are ready and willing to help. They are genuinely interested in your well-being, genuinely interested in your growth. So I think that is one of the most important things that has kept me in Esri for 18 years. I enjoyed all the people I work with, the support I've gotten, and I come to work every day and I still look forward to having lunch with everybody, So that is my answer.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you to each of you. All right, y'all. Last but not least, my massive thank you goes out to Val, Karl, and Roshan. Thank you so, so much, y'all. Obviously, there was a ton of prep work that went in behind the scenes before today. We are always amazingly impressed by the Esri team anyway. Thank you all so, so much for not just the prep work, but spending time with us today, sharing your expertise. This is the kind of stuff people can't Google. So thank you very, very much for sharing that with us. And we're incredibly happy to have gotten to spend the last hour with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Meg.
Thank you for
All
having
right,
us.
Great
y'all,
time.
that is it from us today. So whether today was your first Power to Fly event or your 50th, I sincerely hope it will not be the last. I hope that y'all go out and have the day that y'all voted for and do something nice for someone, okay? Something small, but just do something nice for somebody. Maybe it'll make you feel better today. We'll see you back here next time.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye now.
Thanks.